Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Kathryn Tancos. Hi, Kathryn. Welcome back.
Hi. Thank you, Vasco. It's a pleasure being here.
So, Kathryn, on Tuesdays, we talk about teams, of course, but we also want to know, what was the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
This book is something I carry around with me everywhere I go. It influences both my career and my personal life. It's called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. It is a fabulous book that sets a framework for giving and receiving feedback, whether it be praise or criticism. And the basic premise is that we all fall into one of four quadrants. You can either practice ruinous empathy, which is where I land, manipulative insincerity, obnoxious aggression, or compassionate candor. And as Scrum Masters, our goal is really to find ourselves in the quadrant of compassionate candor. So that's being very direct with folks. It's not glossing over problems. It's actually bringing those problems to the forefront, but with humility and without blame and judgment. So really, it opens the door to building an environment of trust and respect where the team can learn how to communicate with one another in order to achieve their goals. And it addresses problems head on without trying to bury them and sweep them under the rug where they will surely arise again.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we talk about when we discuss, failures and anti-patterns, and like today, we will talk about teams that self-destruct. We very often encounter a moment where the Scrum Master that is, can't bring up the difficult topic, or the team members can't bring up the difficult topic. It kind of gets not ignored because we can't ignore it. We feel it all the time, but it gets overlooked and not addressed by the team. Is there a specific lesson from the book that you have that you can share with us about how to bring that topic up, the difficult topic that might be preventing the team from performing?
So, in my experience, what I've seen from both colleagues and leaders is this tendency to avoid major issues. And it's not done on purpose. But I think a lot of us, because we are human and we do care about the other person's feelings or the team's feelings, we may tend to avoid certain topics that are impacting their performance. I've been on teams in the past where and this is where the ruinous empathy comes in, where they're just burned out. They're working so hard and they're really trying to reach that deadline and get that new amazing feature out the door to the customers. And when you're in a situation like that and they're working incredibly hard and burning out, you can tend to avoid any problems or issues that are arising or that exist because you don't want to stress them out. You want them to continue producing great work. You don't want to make the problems even worse. But in doing that, it tends to have a snowball effect where it just grows and grows and grows until eventually there's some sort of explosion.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you really try to avoid. And it's a really big balancing act that a Scrum Master must play, knowing when and where is the appropriate time to discuss these topics, and then also the how. So let's say a team is having issues with estimating their stories. I've been in situations where leadership says, you must use story points. You must use throughput. And then you tell the team, well, leadership is saying we have to do it, so we're going to do it. And the team pushes back, and rightfully so. There might be a lack of understanding on how to do estimation. There could be a myriad of reasons. But I think the biggest mistake here, and things where radical candor can help, is getting to the core of it. What is this problem for you? What value is there if we try doing this another way? Is there value of learning the way that leadership is asking us to do. So, really, you want to pull the team in and understand their frustration and pain points and work with them on a solution because that brings them on the journey with you instead of you demanding and insisting that they get on the path you want them to be on, because that never goes well.
Indeed. And maybe we have one of those stories next when we talk about the teams that self-destruct. So, Kathryn, let's talk about teams and how they develop these patterns or behaviors that over time lead to problems. Tell us that story.
So over a year ago, I came into an organization that were just trying out an agile transformation. And I was brought in as a program manager, but with my agile background, they wanted me to lead the agile transformation. So I had been working with about 6 teams, and these teams were just really deep into, let's say, bad habits. And I don't want to say bad habits that's to diminish them in any way, but it was just kind of a symptom of the culture. What became immediately clear was there was a level of ego and arrogance and judgment amongst themselves, amongst leadership. And those characteristics will be the downfall of any team.
Can you give an example of what that looks like, for example, in a planning meeting or a retro? How did that emerge?
Yeah, so it emerged in pretty much all of the meetings where the team members weren't working closely with one another to problem solve. Team members believed that they were the ones who had the answers, and it was the only answer, and it was the right answer. So there was no open dialogue going on in backlog grooming and planning. It was a my way is the best way, and this is how we're going to do it. And that immediately shuts everyone down. I mean, who really wants to open up and share? Who wants to bring their best selves to the table when no one's listening? So there were a lot of anti patterns that came out of that as well, especially around the story pointing that I was talking about earlier. We had a team of both both Android and iOS developers. And we were all working on the same product, but for different platforms. And the iOS team would say, well, I'm not story pointing an Android user story. And, the Android folks would say, well, I'm not going to point an iOS story. And then QA would come in, well, I don't know how to develop, so I'm not pointing any of this. So it was very difficult to get these teams to work together as a unit and be invested in one another because there was a lack of trust. There was a lot of judgment going on that was happening, and that will be the downfall. That's where any team, it doesn't matter how great your code is, if you can't work together and meet each other in a place of non-judgment and openness, then it doesn't matter what that code does because
and with the intention of helping, right? Because the
right.
problem is that when you're stepping back, you're also not creating the space necessary for the others to ask for help, right?
Right.
So if you look at this story now, let's say with the benefit of hindsight and having gone through this and having the benefit of having reflected on it, if you were to turn back the clock and get back to that moment when the story started, what would you have done differently?
My approach to the agile transformation itself would have been different because, again, it was leadership saying we must do Scrum. And it was me delivering that message to the teams who weren't bought in. And the interesting thing is that other parts of the organization, leadership there weren't bought in either. It was a technology organization saying, we're going to do this. And so because of this tight deadline we were on for the transformation, we went at it rapidly without first engaging other team members, other parts of the organization, and really understanding how that's going to impact their work as well. So it created an explosion right out of the gate. So with that being said, what I would have done to begin with is really get to know the teams first, get to know all the parts of the organization that would be impacted by this transformation, understanding their pain points, understanding what we're trying to solve, understanding what's working well and what can we build on instead of starting from scratch. Because it's about pulling people into the journey with you and not forcing them on that road.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, as you said, understanding their pain points, what's working well, and kind of through that becoming a helper rather than a pusher, right? It's their
Yes.
transformation in the end. And if we can help them verbalize what the pain points are and maybe even come up with potential things to try out, then it's their change and it's no longer
Yes.
something we're pushing on them.
And the mistake that I see with leadership in teams is they expect the Scrum Master to have all the answers and to come up with all the solutions. And really, this is for the team to learn how to help themselves. And that's what Scrum Masters do best. We help teams learn how to help themselves so that they don't have to be dependent on other members of the team, that they can self-organize and that they can become self-leaders and drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to put it. Scrum Masters help teams learn how to help themselves. Thank you for that, Kathryn.
Sure.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.